electrocuted. Great. So now we can start working on it. I'll go through the same and do the rest of it with these other ones. We'll do them one at a time. I'm probably going to start, actually probably going to start by doing this CAN capacitor, because this one just has one capacitor in it, so that'll be really easy to figure out how I'm going to replace that one. This one with the multi-section has all the symbols on the side here, and there's like a half circle, a rectangle, a triangle, and a negative symbol. And on the very bottom there I can see a rectangle and a half circle and a triangle, so the other one must be negative, but it's a little bit iffy on those ones to visualize, and so I'm going to have to consult the schematic and make sure that I'm actually soldering the right leads there when I go to do that one. So that's it. I'm going to open this up. We'll start with this one. Okay, got the MPX unit opened up, and the capacitor we're replacing is this big can, and it says 30 microfarad, 250 volts DC. It says it right there on the side. And we're going to be replacing that with this cap here, which is a 350 volt 33 microfarad. So that's more on both sides, more higher voltage rating and higher capacitance rating, but that is okay when it comes to electrolytics. So we'll go into the chassis here, and I had to pull stuff out of the way and get underneath this big glob of wires here in order to see the leads. You can see them down in there, down underneath that cap. It's got a one black wire and one red wire. The black wire is on the chassis and comes through the can, so you can see it, you know, that red wire there, and then the black wires there. And again, for safety's sake, you know, this was tested first. To replace this one, I'm going to just desolder this whole can. I'm probably going to remove the entire can. Normally I'd try to shove a cap underneath it and just clip the leads on the can, leave the can there. The reason I'm going to take the whole can off and do it from the top is because the only place I don't have room to shove this cap down underneath all these wires comfortably. I could glue it or zip tie it to the chassis over here, but because this is a tuner, I don't really want to move too much of the circuitry. That helps with all the alignment and everything, to kind of leave things as it is. So I just feel a little bit, you know, to add wire to it and bring it over this direction doesn't feel like it's necessarily the best idea. Brings basically the electrolytics a lot closer into this tuning circuit here, and I feel like might as well just still have them up on top where they originally were. Probably be better. I don't know for sure. Sounds right. This is an electrolytic, and then there's one more electrolytic over here. So so that's it. We're gonna cut this thing, clip it, open it up, and solder back to it. Solder it right on top. Okay, so this was the electrolytic cap from the MPX unit. As you can see, the replacements in there. 33 microfarad, 350 volts. You can see a little bit of solder dripped through, but it's not really in the way or anything. I put the cap just hovering up where the original can was. You can mount them up underneath if you want. This seemed like the logical spot because there's hardly any room down here. You can see that I mounted the ground of it right to the chassis, and then there's some heat shrink tubing around the hot line that was coming off it. The original can is this here, and this would be the ground, the housing, and then this would have been the hot, and it's all mounted up there, and you can see the 30 microfarad, 250 volts. And again, we went higher on ours, 33 at 350, which is fine. So that's the electrolytic. This over here, here's another electrolytic I just replaced. That one, a lot of the joints that I do, I'll clip the lead off the old one and twist the two leads together and solder them here. Sometimes I solder to the original terminals. But it all depends on whether I have room or whether it's gonna, a bunch of other stuff's gonna come off with it. In this tuner, I'm not going to mess with any resistors or any other caps. We're leaving the rest of this alone besides these electrolytics that I replaced. With electrolytics, on one side of them, the old ones, you're going to see a positive lead on here, or a positive mark on there. There's a plus sign on one side of these caps right there. And on the new caps, there's all of these just zeros with an arrow. That's kind of hard to see, but it's explained in the in that antique radio recap that I mentioned earlier. You see the arrows with the zero, and the zero actually points to the negative terminal, or the ground, whereas, like I said, the older caps out of these older units actually point to the positive side. So either way, the alignment, the orientation of that is super important, or else the cap will explode. That's a big deal. I've never put one in backwards, but it could happen if you're not being really careful and paying attention. So that's the MPX unit. I'll go through and do all the rest of these boards. I might try to make like might try to film it as I do it. I've decided I'm not going to teach you or try to teach anybody how to actually solder. There's too many videos and pointers on that. Plus, I think to do it good just takes practice. But what I will say is that these are your basic tools you're going to need for this, for recapping amplifiers and doing, electronic work. First, this is a good soldering iron. Don't even bother with all of the hardware store ones. They'll do a basic job, but for just doing repeat work, you got to spend the money. I forget what this model is, Hako or Hako, I don't know. I looked it up, maybe $880 or something like that. About $100 on eBay you can find them. And so anyways, that's a must. And then also a good solder sucker pin thing. Good solder. This is a hardware store variety stuff, but as long as it says it's actually for electronics and not plumbing work. This is spaghetti tubing, so you can put this over leads if so they don't touch the don't accidentally touch other leads or the chassis if they're not supposed to. Some small tools and these little tiny little wire clippers and tiny little pliers. This is like maybe a jeweler's set or something that we picked up somewhere, and that seems to work really good. I like these helping hand tools, as you can put caps in there. If you're like paralleling stuff, you can string them across here and do the solder work right there. And you can use this too if you end up with doing work on circuit boards and everything. You can clip them in here and use the magnifying glass to see a little better. A multimeter, a really good one. This one can test lots of stuff: resistance, capacitance, diode checks, all the voltages, everything you need there. So you got to get a good one. That's again a couple. You're looking at spending $100 for something solid. Then the Variac, which is just you don't need this. It's not a necessity like the soldering iron and the pliers, but this is good for warming up the amplifiers to test to see if they work before doing the job. If you're going to get real serious, then you're looking at these right here are actually to do little tiny plastic tools for doing tuner alignments. And then if you're going to do that work, then you need these, which this is a radio frequency signal generator, and this is a vacuum tube voltmeter. Now both of these, before you even start working in order to use these to realign a tuner, you actually have to recap these, because these are vintage units, and I got these from a friend who's an eBay salesman, but I was able to pick them up for maybe $30 or $40 each, I think. But that's only if you want to do tuner alignments. Otherwise, leave the tuners alone and just redo the amplifier. That's probably the smartest thing to do. And on this job, like I said already, on this job we just did the caps just the main electrolytic caps on the tuner and the MPX unit. So that's it. That's your set of tools. Next I'm going to go into do the tuner, that's actually back over here. We're going to replace this can capacitor, probably check out these light bulbs while I'm at it. And there's plenty of room on the bottom here, right there where the can cap is supposed to go. There's plenty of room for to squeeze in the replacement caps that need to go in there. And also, if you see that little black capacitor right there, is actually like a dual capacitor. It has two caps in one. It's got two leads coming off of one side and the ground coming off the other. So what I'm going to do is actually attach two caps together on the ground side of things, and then use the two leads to reconnect to these original leads. And with this one, with the big can capacitor, you see the leads here. Fortunately, this one, they're both the exact same capacitance, so that'll be easy for me to take the two grounds, connect them together, connect them to the chassis wherever this original can cap was grounded, and then I'll just probably do it all right underneath here. I got plenty of room, and then strap and send the hot leads from here to there. And that's it. Those are the only two electrolytics in here. So actually it's a total of 4 caps, because there's 2 to replace what's in the can and 2 to replace that little dual unit there. That's the next step. Alright, that was before and this is after. As you can see right there, the base of that big can capacitor, I clipped the leads completely. Those 2 right there are the replacement for the multi-section capacitor. You can see I put some heat shrink or some spaghetti tubing around it to protect the leads so they don't touch those other ones in the tube socket. Those right there are the replacement 30 microfarad capacitors for the can. You can see they're jointed down to the chassis at the bottom, tied together on the ground side, and then the 2 hots stick up here with the all the leads that connect to the hots. Put a zip tie around them. So that's one way to do it. Every time you do one of these, they're different. So that's the way this one was done.